Hey, this is Jeremy. Welcome back. We are going to dive into the screening and application process for residents. Obviously, at this point, we've been in business since 2017. We've processed, thousands of applications, and we're always fine-tuning our process and criteria. And really excited where we're at now for the technology that's come into this space and allowed us to analyze and keep a very high standard, predictable sort of process for residents that apply to make sure that we're staying in compliance with fair housing laws, that we're not discriminating against people or pets, familial status, all these other things, right? That can get you and us in hot water, especially if you're self-managing something that you want to put everybody through the same process. So for us, we use a lot of technology to take a look at, income, eviction records, delinquencies, past delinquencies, liens that are on them, outstanding debts for credit cards, medical bills, sex offender list, terrorist watch list. We're really going to see everything about them. We're landlord verifications, if we're able to get those, previous management company verifications as well. And if people need a co-signer, putting them on the same process as well. And then for the pets, putting the pets through a screening process to get an idea of the breed, vaccination records, height, weight, pictures, all that sort of stuff. So if they claim to have one pet and after they move in, we realize it's a different type of dog, we can hit them with certain penalties, right? So our lease has been really, really modified over many years, a lot of money to real estate attorneys to make sure we have a very powerful lease that is in favor, obviously, of you and us as the owner, to make sure that we have a good standard, that tenants are also understand the rules. And, if they pay on time, there's no issues, right? But we have things in the lease that help us protect against residents that don't want to just do things the right way or don't want to pay on time or just want to violate something in the lease. But your biggest headaches in real estate investing for rental properties is going to be by the quality of the tenants that get placed in the property. So sometimes the property location and condition can drive a certain sort of demographic. So that's something to think about as you're buying properties, understanding the areas, crime, just all that sort of stuff, right? And so that can definitely dictate the challenge of finding the most qualified residents or your sort of challenges that you may run into with delinquencies, evictions, issues on the properties. We typically see kind of lower end areas under a certain rent amount where there's just more times that we have to deal with that stuff, right? Which, obviously people that cannot afford certain areas or as much in rental prices may not have as much savings, and anything in the economy can disrupt it. But getting back to applications, residents going to take a look at the property. They're going to understand, hey, it's probably first month's rent, security deposit, a few other things. If they got pets, there might be a pet fee, that sort of thing. So they'll understand everything up front before they apply. They'll go through the application process. They'll submit documentation to support everything that they have going on. If they're W-2, there's certain forms of income that we're going to look for. If they're a business owner, it might be a little bit different. If they are here on some sort of visa and not a citizen, there might be some things that we look for. But we're going to get a full picture, be able to make a pretty quick decision. If they upload everything as they're supposed to, we can usually have a thumbs up or thumbs down within 24 hours. And some of the technology that's really cool that we are able to implement is the residents can actually connect their bank account directly to our screening software. So if it's a bartender that makes an hourly but then cash tips, and they're not, maybe the cash tips aren't going to show up in the pay stubs or whatever, but it gets deposited in the bank account, or they're a sales job, or they're just a business owner, we can see the seasonality to the income, which is really helpful, especially if somebody's saying, hey, I just made $8,000 for the past 3 months in a row, but then 3 months before that, they didn't make anything, right? Maybe they're a contractor, something like that, where the income's really sporadic. We're able to sort of see those ebbs and flows. Or if they're in an industry that has some just seasonality to the time of year, we can take a look at that. So that's definitely the preferred method where residents do that. But if they do pay stubs, tax returns, that sort of stuff, we always look at that as well. We may request additional documentation too, depending on the scenario of their job. And so we want to make sure we put great tenants into the property. We have one of our guarantees where if we have an evicted tenant that we put in the property within the first 12 months, we're going to pay out of pocket. We'll probably lose, anywhere from 500 to, maybe could be as high as like $2,000 if we have to go through that. So we're incentivized to make sure we find good residents, or the best, most qualified residents, I should say, on a first come first serve basis. So the first one to apply that has all this stuff gets the property and gets moved in. So our application process is the same process that we use on our personal rental properties. And so at this point, even technology that we have where if they upload bank statements from Chase or Bank of America, and the color code of the logo does not match the color code that the bank actually uses, we will know. So if somebody tries to use fraudulent bank statements or something like that, we even have that detailed type of technology that can detect the fraud. Same thing for pets, right? People trying to sort of say their pet is actually, emotional support animal, or that which we can't charge fees if there's certain service animals, that sort of thing. We're able to detect when that's a fraud or just not true. And a couple other things that we implement so we get the best opportunity to have the most qualified resident move in as quick as we can, and with the least amount of headaches. So most of the evictions we deal with are residents that were already in the property when we got hired. So typically our eviction rate is 1% or less. And again, the majority of that, I would say at least over half of those, if not more, are residents that we inherited. So our sort of process is really good, especially for that first year, right? Somebody could always lose their job 3 months after getting applied, but extremely rare that we have to evict a tenant that we just placed within the first 12 months. And so it just, like I said, we've managed and rented to hundreds of families at this point and know what to look for when it comes through application screening. So that's 50% of the battle up front is screening correctly, having a proven process where you're treating all the residents, potential residents the same, putting them through the same process so they can't say they were discriminated against during the application process, and asking for all the right documents. So if it's a roommate situation or multiple people on the lease, all that sort of stuff we're looking through and making sure that we make the best decision on the owner's behalf, because we don't get paid if the rent doesn't get paid. And just so we sort of suffer if the owner suffers as well. So hopefully that gives you some clarity around our application and screening process. And then once somebody gets approved, we usually move them in within a few business days. Most of the time when people apply, they're looking to move within 30 days or less. That's what we tell residents is, hey, if you're looking to move further out than that, don't apply. We want somebody that can start a lease within 30 days. And so that way, if they do apply and we approve, we're not waiting 60 days for them to actually move in. As long as the lease starts within 30 days, if they're traveling down to the area, they can move in a week after that. It doesn't matter. But the lease starts, they're paying rent earlier within that 30-day period after being approved. So that's how we handle our application and screening process.